June 1942. Fighters, bombers, and aircraft carriers would battle to decide the fate of the Pacific. The Battle of Midway is one of the finest examples of strategic ingenuity during World War II.
The Japanese had been hurrying to expand their reach in the Pacific, conquering islands between the United States and Japan.
Japanese Navy, led by Admiral Yamamoto, believed that the U.S. needed to be defeated quickly before they reached full military production.
This was even more critical as the United States started to face war on two fronts, with Germany holding Britain in its grasp. FDR had to make a decision, and if it didn't work, the Allied powers could have fallen in just one battle.
Yamamoto's idea hinged on a surprise attack, sending a small force to the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska to gain an advantage. In doing so, he expects the American forces to answer, leaving their post at Midway for the Japanese to invade. Phase 1. Japanese carrier striking force, led by Chuichi Nagumo, will attack Midway Island by air. Phase 2. Yamamoto will bring the Navy invasion force, led by Vice Admiral Nobutake Kondo. However, the U.S. have already taken measures to defeat Yamamoto's plan.
Commander Joseph Rochefort is able to decipher the Japanese naval code and learn the time, size, and strategy of the impending invasion.
June 3rd, 1942. Admiral Chester Nimitz decides to keep the American fleet in the air for Phase 1. As Yamamoto approaches Midway, he grows suspicious of the Americans listening in on radio. Jack Reed scouts the first Japanese plane, and U.S. forces start to attack Admiral Kondo's Navy fleet.
The U.S. B-17 bombers can't land any hits, and Kondo can't inform Yamamoto of their ambush due to their radio silence policy.
Japanese pilots bomb hangars, runways, hospitals, and power plants, crippling U.S. forces at Midway, but they still manage to hold on. A Japanese fighter informs Nagumo that another attack is needed to finish off the Americans, and Nagumo has to make a decision. After Phase 1, Nagumo anticipates a naval battle with the Americans from the east. But before he can respond, American fleets storm Nagumo's forces, and he is shocked that they knew of his location in advance.
In the midst of the chaos, Nagumo decides to rearm his planes for a second attack on Midway. However, he doesn't realize that the United States has 116 aircraft prepared to attack the Japanese carriers.
Nagumo can't act until his bombers return from Midway, and American bombers arrive from aircraft carriers from Yorktown and Hornet.
The United States suffers many casualties as they attack, unescorted, and this gives the Japanese time to refuel and strategize. As the battle reaches its climax, Lieutenant McCluskey attempts to attack the Japanese carriers, but there are no ships in sight. McCluskey's next decision decides the state of the war.
Almost out of fuel, McCluskey decides not to return to his fleet, but to attack the Northwestern Fleet, which shifts the tide at Midway. McCluskey's troops drop 9 bombs, striking a gasoline truck that kills the entire command staff.
Fighters and bombers from Yorktown arrive, striking the Japanese left and right. They eventually take down the Akagi, and Nagumo informs Yamamoto that they only have one carrier left.
Nagumo launches 18 bombers towards Yorktown, forcing the U.S. to abandon ship as it tilts.
In retaliation, Admiral Spoon sends all of his forces from the Hornet to attack the Hiryu, dealing the fatal blow. This ultimately ended the battle with a U.S. victory.
The war is over. The Americans decidedly win the Battle of Midway, with far less casualties compared to the Japanese. In total, the Japanese lose 2,500 servicemen, 292 aircraft, and 4 aircraft carriers. This total loss would force the Japanese to abandon their plan to expand the Pacific, remaining on defense for the rest of World War II. So why is this battle important? The Japanese suffered a tremendous loss. The Battle of Midway gave hope to the Americans, getting revenge from Pearl Harbor and showing that the Japanese could in fact be defeated. This victory would ultimately give the U.S. an upper hand in defeating the Axis powers.